welcome to today's Canyon Conversation. Today I'm joined by Becky Yeager. Becky she's raising monarch caterpillars, I believe. Is kind of an expert on monarchs. Is that right, Becky?
Not an expert, but a monarch enthusiast.
A monarch enthusiast, an amateur expert, right?
Yes, there you go.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, tell me a little bit about what you're doing with the caterpillars out at your place.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been involved in monarch conservation for the past 7 or 8 years. Started when Ron Helstern, one of my neighbors, wrote a letter to the editor, and I read the letter, and at that same time, he's always promoting monarchs. So it was, I saw that letter, and my girls were little, so we ran out to our milkweed plants, which were growing wild, and found some eggs on it, called Ron. He came over and gave us a great lesson. So I've been watching for him ever since and just trying to be involved in whatever way I can. Research, just promoting the growth of milkweed and using less pesticides, that sort of thing. So yeah, I do have some growing outside right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, tell me a little bit about when we can look for monarchs, caterpillars, and adults here in Utah, kind of when they come through here.
Yeah, we typically start looking for eggs in mid to late June, like around Father's Day time. We try to find eggs just because if you can protect them in some way, there's less chance of them to be preyed upon. So the predation is extremely high with monarchs, even at the egg stage. Things like earwigs and wasps and spiders eat them. The caterpillars get preyed on by protozoan parasites and tachnid flies. So you know, they're very sensitive. So we try to protect the eggs so that they're in an enclosed habitat. Some people rear them inside, I've done that. Some people rear them outside in a habitat, a mesh container. And this year we're really promoting allowing them to stay on the plant and putting a netted bag around the leaf so that they can go in their natural habitat.
So just a protective netting over that natural milkweed that keeps out some of those earwigs and predators and things.
Exactly, right. We raise them to the chrysalis stage. We test them for the protozoan parasite, which has become a really big problem in northern Utah. And then another reason to kind of contain them, not only to protect them from the predators, but we like to test them for the OE and then also tag them for release as part of the Southwest Monarch study.
Wonderful. Well, tell me a little bit, how is this protozoan parasite carried to the butterflies? Do we know how they contract that?
Yeah, it's contracted through the spores that the protozoan parasite distributes. It can be on the leaf, on the egg, on the adult monarch will distribute the spores, and then it's passed on. So how we test them is we have a little sticky tape that we put on the abdomen of the adult monarch, and then we look at it under a microscope. We would send it into a lab in Georgia and get the results back in the new year. By then it's too late, we've already released them. So we can look at it real time now thanks to Jennifer Dowd, who provided us with some super cool microscopes, and you can see if it has the spores or not.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So how do you, if they do have the spores, what do you do? How do you treat them? Is it possible to treat them?
Well, a couple things. We are bleaching the eggs. So when we find the eggs, we are doing a really diluted bleach solution on the leaf and the egg. And we're also trying to keep their habitat, any kind of environment, the bags themselves, bleached in between uses. And that will destroy the parasite, we hope. And
at least stop that spread from another to another habitat if we're using those bags, right?
Right.
Okay.
If we find a butterfly that has a heavy load, we're still in that stage of deciding what do we do if it has a light load versus a heavy load. We're just, we're kind of at our peak caterpillar season, and we have more and more butterflies every day and testing them. So we're not quite sure where we're going with that data yet.
Yeah. What does the disease actually do to the butterflies? How does it affect them?
Yeah, well, if they're lucky, they live to be a healthy monarch, and maybe if it's a light load, they're not dispersing it that much, or maybe their genes are strong enough where they're not they can survive it. But oftentimes we see the caterpillar either in one of the instar stages, it'll start to get dark and then die, Sometimes it goes into the J, which is when it starts to form the chrysalis, when it's done feeding and it's ready to form a chrysalis, and it will just kind of droop and not form the chrysalis. And sometimes they die within the chrysalis. Sometimes they come out with crumpled wings. So it can be at different stages.
Just depends on probably how bad they have it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, I know I've raised monarchs before and been lucky enough to watch that whole J shaping and just how amazing that is. But for some of our folks who maybe haven't been able to observe that process or aren't familiar with it, could you give us kind of a quick rundown of their life cycle and what happens?
Sure. So they're laid as an egg. That egg hatches in like 3 to 5 days. You'll see it's a little dome-shaped egg, kind of cream color, very uniform, typically on the underside of the leaf, and very tiny. It'll hatch in 3 to 5 days, and then it's in the caterpillar stage, goes through 5 instars, and over 10 to 18 days, it'll form the chrysalis. It goes into a J, becomes just very still in this J at whatever location it chooses, hangs upside down, and then it'll form that chrysalis within 24 hours. It stays in the chrysalis for another about 10 to 15 days before it comes out. Ecloses is the term.
Yeah, it's a fascinating process to watch. I know I love watching that whole process. It's so fascinating to watch.
And if you're really, really lucky, you can see it go from that J into the chrysalis. And it's like it takes something and zips over its head. It's really cool to see, but it takes seconds.
Yeah, it's like it's zipping itself in a mummy bag or something when I watch them. It's crazy.
And it's actually not zipping anything over it. It's shedding its skin that one final time.
Yeah, awesome. So you mentioned you tag them as part of, is it the Southwest Monarch study?
Yes.
Perfect. So tell me, what do those tags do? What information is that telling us, and what are they using that for?
It's really important to track the migration. We don't know if our Cache Valley population goes to California, to the east coast, the west coast, the coastal line in California, or down to Mexico. So we're still trying to determine where our population goes. They've got a lot of data from the tagged monarchs that indicate in different regions where they're headed. So it's a really cool process. It's a tiny tag. The tag it's a new one this year. It's blue. It has the website, southwestmonarchs.org on it, and then a unique number for that butterfly. We record that data when we release them. If it's a male, female, healthy, the date, that sort of thing. And then we submit that to the program in an Excel sheet, and then they have all that information. So monarch migration's already started. My first tag was found 2 days ago.
Wow.
What made it from here, Nibley, to North Ogden in a matter of like 5 or 6 days. Somebody saw it, took a picture of it, reported the data, and that's kind of how that whole system works.
Perfect. What's the latest we can expect to see adult monarchs here in the valley?
They're still here. I had 3 or 4 in my yard this week. I had a pair, not sure if they were mating or not, and then I had a lone male that was kind of flying through, maybe looking for a mate. I don't think they were migrating at this time, but we know that the majority right now, as soon as we get into early September, that's when they're going to really start their migration season. So they're still here. They still have I'm finding a few eggs and a lot of caterpillars.
Yeah, I'm enjoying learning more about our local populations. I know I mostly worked with them in Kansas, which is a totally different population. They're coming and going from totally different places, and I haven't been able to find that much about our local Cache Valley population. So that's interesting to learn that we're still trying to figure out where they're going and coming from.
Yeah, we've got the western population and the eastern population. Both are in decline, but our western population, west of the Rockies, is, who we're mostly active with. It's the same species. They come together in the wintering grounds, but they're 2 fairly different populations and studied differently a little bit.
So you mentioned you have to, when you tag them, you record male, female, all those things. So if I remember correctly, you're able to tell them apart because the males have a little scent gland. Is that right? Am I thinking correctly?
On the hind wing, when their wings are opened out flat, you can see a dot on each side, and it's a scent gland. You're correct. Releases a chemical to attract the mate.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's how you tell the males from the females.
Yeah, that's kind of fun for our visitors. Maybe if they see them, if they can look for that and they can tell them apart. Fascinating. So for our visitors at home that are wanting to help out with monarchs, what are some things that you suggest that they could do or get involved with?
Well, I guess the biggest thing that has been promoted for a long time is plant milkweed, because milkweed is the only plant that monarch will lay its egg on. It's the only plant that the caterpillar will feed on. And we have 3 native species here in the valley, quite a few, I can't remember, 12 or 14 in the state. So we want to protect that milkweed, plant milkweed in your yard. It's always better if you're trying to establish a habitat to have a lot of nectaring plants around. So do some research on what nectaring plants grow well in the valley or in whatever region you're in. So plant that near your milkweed. A good habitat also has availability of water, which you can just put a little dish with some stones in it or pebbles and keep that full of water.
A shallow bird bath or something maybe?
Yep, a shallow bird bath is really good with those. Yeah, lots of ways you can do that.
Wonderful. Well, so pollinators are also great monarchs, rather great pollinators. That came out backwards. Pardon me. So how do they help us out in return? Is there anything that you've noticed? I love just watching them. I think they're just beautiful. And
they're just majestic, aren't they? Yeah.
They
well, pollinators in general are important because they pollinate the plants that we eat and our flowers, and they're also an indicator of the health of our environment because they are so sensitive to chemical use and environmental factors, just like bees are. So it's just one thing to keep in mind that they're pretty important indicators of our environment that we live in, the air that we breathe, the chemicals that we're taking in.
Yeah, pollinators in general are in decline, and I know I've read, I think up to 1/3 or more of the food we eat, we rely on pollinators for. So it's really crucial to have that habitat to feed ourselves, but also to be just enjoy, like you said, those majestic butterflies.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So Becky, tell me a little bit. I know you had some research, some websites maybe you wanted to share with folks.
Yeah, let me see if I can pop one up. Let me tell you 3 that you can check out. One is the Southwest Monarchs study, which is swmonarchs.org. And so if you're interested in tagging or tracking the monarchs or just getting more information about the program, check that site out. Also, the state has 2 sites that we've put together. One is called the Utah Pollinator Pursuit site. And so that's going to talk about all pollinators in general. It will link over to a monarch conservation website, but it's also going to have information about the western bumblebee and fireflies. They're not pollinators, but it's a rare insect in the state.
Yes,
so I'm going to put one up here. I can share my screen. And this will be the monarch conservation site. It has a long website name, so you might just Google monarch conservation in Utah and you'll get to it. But it has a lot of information on the life cycle, groups that you can join, or places that you can go for more information, what's going on in the state, also how to grow milkweed, what types are in the state, and copy type butterflies like viceroy that look like monarchs that you might confuse.
That's right. We do have viceroy, don't we? That looks very similar.
We do, and they're tricky.
Tricky to
tell. Yeah, but a lot of people see painted ladies and they think that's a monarch because the painted ladies will come through much earlier. We always get reports of monarchs in the spring, and they're not. They're the painted ladies.
Really? Yeah.
And they come in masses because they migrate through too. So let me see if I can pull this screen up. I'm not real great at Zoom.
I will be sure and link these as well so people can find them easily.
Okay, I can send you that information. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is the Monarch Conservation website that the state has developed. I helped them put this together, but it's got a really lot of information on the monarchs themselves. I'm just gonna, how you can get involved. And they have a program where you can report your sightings. You can also report milkweed sightings, any eggs, caterpillars, and butterflies. And so this will be an area where you can go to learn how to report any of your sightings.
That's a great tool. So
other websites that you can report to as well. But
yeah, I know a lot of our Stokes participants are familiar with iNaturalist. So
yes, iNaturalist
look pretty similar.
Yep, exactly. It's pretty similar, and they will cross their information. So
Awesome.
they're all
Yeah.
good. Milkweed Mapper is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Journey North.
I love Journey North. I have used that. So that's a great resource. Teachers out there, check out Journey North. Yeah.
So there's
Perfect.
place out for identification tips, any events that are going on in the state, just current events, what to plant, tagging, alternative reporting sites, and then just resources, etc.
Now, can folks look forward to next year? I know usually, I think in June, you guys out in Nibley do a butterfly festival. Is that usually an annual event we can look forward to, hopefully?
I hope so. In the past, I've done it at the Gardener's Market. And this year we thought we would go big with it. And so we wanted to do a big festival in Nibley at Heritage Park and had it all planned out with bands and food trucks and different booths. But of course, COVID got us and we had to cancel that. We did a webinar instead, but we definitely, if we can, we'll have it next year for sure. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll have to watch out for that next year. I know I was all excited for it this year, and yes, COVID kind of ruined a lot of things.
It did.
It did. Another question. So I know they're very sensitive. So do you have any suggestions for folks as far as pesticide use, what not to do so that they don't hurt those monarch eggs and caterpillars?
Yeah, they're finding a lot of the studies that are coming out just recently are showing that those pesticides and chemicals that we use in our yard or even to spray around our house for spiders or termites, they can stay in the soils for a very long time, even years and years and years. And they're absorbed up through the stems, and then the monarchs can still consume them. Or if the monarchs are sprayed by these chemicals, they're so sensitive to them. So, you know, fewer pesticide uses for sure.
Yeah. So even if you haven't used for a couple of years, it sounds like it may take several years to completely eliminate that pesticide from the soil and from the milkweed that the monarchs are eating. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. So seek alternative methods. You know, a little elbow grease and pull your weeds. And
yeah, I think that's always the best method. Get some exercise and fresh air in too, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Perfect. Do you have any other tips or feedback for us before we let you go, Becky?
Not that I can think off the top of my head. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining you. I will post all of those links that you talked about so they're easily accessible for our viewers to find. And keep looking for monarchs this fall, guys. Thank you for joining us again, Becky.
Sure.
And
my pleasure.
Yes, everyone stay tuned to logannature.org for all of our upcoming programs. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.